Please comment where you are watching in the world. Dating has always been a kind of chaos for me. I don't mean the cute butterflies in your stomach kind of chaos. I mean it's been exhausting, confusing, and often just plain disheartening. I came out as gay when I was 21, and I honestly thought that would be the turning point. I figured once I started being honest with myself, things would naturally start to align. But it didn't quite go that way. As it turns out, the dating pool for queer women in my small part of Ohio was a lot smaller than I'd expected. 9 times out of 10, if I struck up a conversation with someone I was crushing on, they'd eventually drop a line like, "My boyfriend and I love hiking too." It was like this recurring punchline to a joke I never found funny. Eventually, I got tired of guessing. I decided to try something more direct, something that would take the guesswork out of figuring out who was actually into women. That's when I found Amora, a dating app specifically for women who were into other women. It wasn't as popular as some of the big names, but it was niche in the way I needed. Setting up my profile was weirdly nerve-wracking. I spent way too long choosing pictures, writing and rewriting my bio, and second-guessing every word I typed. But once it was up, something unexpected happened. I started seeing women. Actual, real women who were into women. Some in my town, some just outside of it. It was like someone had turned on a light I didn't know existed. I felt this weird mix of relief and hope. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was shouting into a void. I started chatting with a few people casually, nothing serious, just seeing where things might go. But then I matched with Sophie. Sophie was everything I'd been hoping to find. Her profile had this mix of sarcasm and sincerity that immediately pulled me in. She had a goofy picture of herself pretending to eat a giant burger, a caption under one of her selfies that read, "Yes, I know I look like trouble. I'm working on it." It made me laugh out loud, and that almost never happens. We started chatting, and right away it was easy. Like really easy. She lived just 2 towns over, maybe 25 minutes away, which felt like nothing compared to the long-distance nonsense I'd dealt with before. She was quick-witted, flirty in a non-creepy way, and made me feel like I didn't have to try so hard to be interesting. I'll admit it, I was crushing. Hard. We messaged back and forth for a few days, and eventually, I worked up the nerve to ask if she wanted to meet in person. Dinner, something casual. She said yes. I was over the moon. We agreed to meet at a diner in Brookfield, her town. I picked the place, nothing fancy, just a low-key spot with decent food and no reservation needed. I made sure to leave early in case I got lost. I spent a ridiculous amount of time getting ready, trying on 3 different outfits, fixing my hair, redoing my eyeliner twice, but I still managed to get there about 10 minutes early. I walked in, picked a booth by the window, and sat down. My nerves were on fire, but I tried to keep myself busy, fiddling with my phone, adjusting my hair every 2 minutes, checking the mirror in my compact like I might suddenly grow a second nose or something. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. I wasn't panicking yet. I figured maybe she hit traffic. I texted her a quick message. "Hey, just got to the diner. Let me know when you're on your way," smiling face with smiling eyes. The message instantly showed as read. That was the first twinge of unease. No response. I tried not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was driving and didn't want to text. That made sense, right? Another 5 minutes passed. I glanced around the diner. A family was sitting near the entrance, a pair of older women sipping coffee at the counter, and then a man in the back corner booth, sitting alone. He was older, mid-40s maybe, balding slightly, with a thick beard and a bulky jacket. He kept glancing up from his phone to look at me. The first few times, I figured it was just coincidence. Maybe he thought I looked familiar. But then it kept happening. Every time I looked in a different direction, and then back, his eyes would already be on me. I texted Sophie again, this time a little more direct. "Hey, just checking in. You okay?" Read. Still no response. That's when my stomach dropped. Something wasn't right. I felt this weird combination of dread and embarrassment starting to build in my chest. I tried to breathe through it, telling myself I was being dramatic. But then, on impulse, I decided to call her. The phone rang once. Then I heard it. A ringtone. Not from my phone. From somewhere nearby. I turned my head quickly toward the sound. The man in the back booth was fumbling with his phone, trying to silence it. Then my own screen flashed, call declined. He looked up and locked eyes with me. It felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag, slid out of the booth, and walked quickly toward the exit. My hands were shaking. My chest was tight. I didn't even look back until I reached the door. When I turned, he was following me. Jogging. Calling my name. How did he know my name? Nope, I whispered under my breath, fumbling with my keys as I ran toward my car. I could hear his footsteps behind me getting closer. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped my keys. I managed to unlock the door, jump in, and slam it shut just as he reached the car. He banged on the window once, still calling my name, still smiling like this was all some kind of joke. I threw the car into reverse, peeled out of the parking lot, and didn't stop until I was back on the highway. I didn't cry until I got home. But when I did, I couldn't stop. I curled up on my bed and just let it all out. The confusion, the fear, the shame of not seeing it coming. I almost deleted the app then and there. I hovered over the icon, thumb trembling. But something held me back. Some stubborn part of me didn't want to let this ruin everything. So I gave it one more shot. And believe it or not, that's how I ended up meeting Nina, the woman I'm with now. We've been together for almost a year. She knows this story. She knows how scared I was to keep trying. She's the one who reminded me that the bad stories don't get to erase the possibility of good ones. But I'll never forget that night. The way my name sounded coming from a stranger's mouth. The way fear can bloom so suddenly in your chest. The way something that starts with flirting and emojis can end with a man following you through a parking lot. Dating apps can open doors, sure. But they also open windows, ones that people can crawl through if you're not careful. So here's my advice to anyone reading this. Meet in a public place. Tell someone where you're going. Bring your own car. And if something feels off, even just a little, get out. This happened a couple of summers ago, when I was 22. I was staying with my parents in Northern Oregon for a few weeks before heading back to Portland for my final year of university. With nothing much going on in my sleepy hometown, I was bored out of my mind. Everyone I used to hang out with had either moved away or was busy with jobs and relationships, so I found myself spending a lot of time alone. One night, sitting on the edge of my bed, I pulled out my phone and downloaded a dating app. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, just someone to talk to, maybe hang out with before I left town again. After a bit of swiping, I matched with a girl named Lena. I can't even remember which app it was, maybe Tinder or Bumble, but she stood out immediately. Lena had this soft, almost dreamy vibe in her photos. Her hair was dark and wavy, and her smile was crooked in a way that made her seem real. Her bio was short, just a music lyric and a ghost emoji, which made me laugh. We started chatting that night, and something about her responses kept me curious. She was chill, funny in a dry way, but there was something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe it was the way she phrased things. She'd say things like, "You'd look better in the dark," followed by a winky face. Or she'd ask oddly specific questions, like how many windows were in my bedroom, or if I usually sleep with my blinds open. I brushed it off. Maybe it was just her quirky humor? I told myself not to overthink it. After all, it's not like I had anything better to do. After 2 days of back and forth messaging, we exchanged Snapchats. That's where things started to feel off. She sent me random selfies, some filtered, some not. But her responses were inconsistent. Sometimes she'd reply within seconds, other times she'd leave me on read for hours. When she did respond, her messages were usually vague, like "thinking about you," or "wish you were here," even though we hadn't met. I didn't take it too seriously. I wasn't invested. I was just killing time. The second night after we started snapping, I hung out with my old friend Ian. We grabbed pizza and watched a few episodes of some terrible crime doc at his place. Around 11 p.m., I headed home, sent out a few casual snaps, including one to Lena, and went to bed. That's when things got weird. I remember waking up suddenly, feeling disoriented. The room was stuffy, and there was this heaviness in my chest. I reached for my phone, 2:56 a.m. My first thought was that maybe I heard something outside. I usually sleep with a box fan on, but I'd forgotten to turn it on that night, so every little sound felt amplified. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. Something, or someone, was standing outside my bedroom window. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, and sat up slowly. But no, it was real. There was a figure standing there, half hidden by the edge of the window frame, just watching. My heart dropped into my stomach. The porch light was off, so it was hard to make out details. But the figure was about my height, maybe a little shorter. Long dark hair. Slim build. It looked like Lena. I froze. My first instinct was to grab my phone. I was shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. I opened Snapchat. Her Bitmoji was still right next to mine on the snap map. She was here. She had tracked me using my location. I quickly snapped a photo of the map, just in case, and messaged her. "Are you outside my window right now?" "What the hell?" I stared at the screen, waiting. A few seconds passed, and then I saw the message was opened. But there was no reply. I looked back toward the window. She was gone. I rushed to the window and pulled the curtain aside. My yard was empty. The wind rustled the leaves slightly, but there was no sign of her. No footsteps, no movement, just darkness. I ran to the other windows in the house, peeking through every curtain, scanning the shadows for any trace of her. Nothing. I sat down on the couch and tried to breathe. My heart was racing. My skin felt clammy. I kept telling myself maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe it was a coincidence. Then I went back to Snapchat. She had blocked me. Just like that, she was gone. Her Bitmoji disappeared. Her name vanished from my friends list. I checked the dating app too. Her profile had been deleted. No trace of her anywhere. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I told Ian about it. He thought I was joking at first, but when I showed him the screenshot, he went quiet. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Do you realize how long she must have been watching you to know where you live?" That thought haunted me. She didn't just show up randomly. She had to have been tracking me, maybe even before we exchanged Snapchats. Maybe she'd followed me from Ian's house. Maybe she'd driven by a few times before making her move. I kept wondering what would have happened if I hadn't woken up. What if I'd left the window cracked open? What if I'd gone outside to check? I never figured out who she really was. I never got a last name, never saw her license plate, never heard her voice in person. She was a ghost, one that slipped through screens and shadows, leaving behind nothing but a chill and a reminder that not everyone online is who they seem. For weeks after that, I was on edge. I checked the locks twice before bed. I kept my blinds shut tight. I deleted SnapMap and turned off location tracking on every app one could think of. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I never told my parents. I didn't want them to freak out. But I started sleeping with a bat next to my bed, just in case. Eventually, the fear dulled. Life moved on. I went back to school, buried myself in classes and work, and tried not to think about Lena. This happened a few years ago, when I was 20 and still figuring out what I wanted from dating, or from life, really. My name's Mia, and I've always found it easier to talk to people online than face-to-face. There's something about the screen that makes it feel less intense, like you can breathe between sentences. But that comfort didn't protect me from what happened that night. It started like most of my dating stories do, with a swipe and a message. I matched with a guy named Dylan on a smaller dating app I'd only started using recently. He wasn't my usual type, but he seemed normal enough. He had a soft smile in his pictures, a short bio that just said, pizza, movies, and long walks at sunset, and he lived in the same city as me, Richmond, Virginia, so I figured why not. He messaged me first. "Hey, I like your vibe," he wrote. "You into horror movies or more of a rom-com person?" I responded right away. We started chatting. He wasn't super charismatic, but he was attentive. He asked a lot of questions, where I was from, what I studied, what kind of music I liked. It felt like he was really trying to get to know me, and I appreciated that. After a few days of talking, he suggested we meet up. His idea was simple. We'd go for a walk downtown, maybe grab a slice of pizza, and see where the night took us. It sounded harmless, casual, and honestly, I needed the distraction. I'd been stuck in a bit of a rut, school stress, friend drama, general life weirdness, so I said yes. We met on a Friday evening. He was standing outside a used bookstore near the river, holding a cup of coffee and looking almost exactly like his photos. A little taller than me, dark jeans, worn sneakers, and a fleece hoodie with the sleeves pushed up. His hair was messier than I expected, but not in a bad way. The first part of the date was fine. We walked along the canal, talking about music and movies and how weirdly humid it had been that week. He had this habit of interrupting me, like he couldn't wait to say what he was thinking, but I let it slide. I figured he was just nervous or socially awkward. Eventually, he suggested going back to his apartment to watch a movie. "I've got pizza at home," he said. "Way better than anything downtown. Plus, I've got a decent couch." I hesitated for a second. I didn't know him that well. But it was early, and I didn't want to seem uptight. I told myself it was just a movie. Just a couch. I agreed. What I didn't realize, what still makes my stomach twist to this day, is that we were already halfway to his apartment. Somewhere during the walk, He'd started steering us in that direction. I hadn't even noticed. That should have been my first real warning sign. His apartment was on the second floor of an old brick building with peeling paint and narrow hallways. Inside, it was small but clean. A couch, a low coffee table, a pile of books in the corner. The lights were dim, and the windows were cracked open. We sat down. He put on a movie, some old vampire flick I'd never heard of, and offered me a drink. I declined. He grabbed a beer for himself and sat down next to me. A little too close. Within the first 10 minutes, he was already leaning in, trying to cuddle. I shifted slightly, giving myself more space. He asked if I was cold and offered me a blanket. I smiled politely and said I was fine. He moved closer anyway. When I leaned forward to grab my phone, he reached for my hair and tucked a strand behind my ear. I didn't say anything, but I felt my body tense. I tried to change the subject, asked about his job, his favorite movies, whatever I could think of. But he kept steering things back to me. My dating history. The kind of guys I'd been with. Whether I'd ever hooked up with someone after just one date. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Not really my thing." He made a face. "You're not like most girls, then." I shrugged. "Guess not." That's when he got quiet. He leaned back, arms crossed, and stared at the screen. I thought maybe I'd offended him, but I didn't care. I was getting ready to leave anyway. "Hey, so," I said, standing up. "I think I'm gonna head out. Got work early tomorrow." He didn't respond. I bent down to grab my shoes by the door. That's when he stood up abruptly and grabbed them from me. "Just stay," he said. "It's late. You don't need to go yet." I reached for my purse. "I really should." He stepped between me and the door. "Mia," he said, voice low. "You don't have to play games. You came here. You knew what this was." My heart started to pound. I tried to keep my voice calm. "I just wanted to hang out. I'm not comfortable staying." He shook his head slowly, then did something that still makes me sick to remember. He grabbed my purse and tossed it on the couch. Then he took my shoes and set them on the kitchen counter, out of reach, and said, "Just relax. You're overreacting." I stared at him, stunned. I didn't know what to do. Do I scream? Push past him? Try to grab my stuff? Before I could decide, he reached for my arm and gently, but firmly, guided me toward the bedroom. "You look like you need to lie down," he said. "You're all worked up." I tried to pull away, but he was stronger than he looked. He wasn't violent, not yet, but his grip made it clear that I wasn't leaving on my own terms. He shoved me gently onto the bed and dropped my things beside me. "Just sleep. You'll feel better." Then, without another word, he turned off the light, laid down next to me fully clothed, and started snoring within minutes. I lay there frozen, my heart thudding so loud I was sure he could hear it. I didn't move for what felt like an hour, afraid that if I did, he'd wake up and change his mind about being gentle. Eventually, when his breathing deepened into a steady rhythm, I moved. Slowly, quietly, I slid off the bed and onto the floor. I crawled, literally crawled, across the room to where he'd tossed my purse. I grabbed it, then tiptoed to the kitchen, grabbed my shoes, and slipped them on without tying them. The front door creaked as I opened it, and I held my breath, waiting for him to stir. He didn't. I stepped into the hallway, pulled the door shut behind me, and ran, barefoot, clutching my shoes, down the stairs and into the street. I didn't stop running until I was 5 blocks away. I called a friend and begged them to pick me up. I didn't even explain until I was in their car, shaking, trying not to cry. When I got home, I locked every door, turned on every light, and sat in my bathroom for an hour, trying to calm down. I had started bleeding. I was on my period and hadn't realized it until I felt the pain in my stomach. I had no idea if Dylan had known. No idea if he'd planned this, or if he was just some loser who didn't understand boundaries. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that I'd gotten out. I never reported him. I didn't tell the police. I didn't even tell my parents. I was too scared, too embarrassed. I blamed myself. For going there. For staying. For not trusting my gut sooner. But I've learned since then. Now I meet people in public. I drive myself. I keep my phone charged and my location shared with my roommate. I don't let anyone rush me into anything. This happened about 4 years ago, but the memory is still sharp, like it happened last week. At the time, I was 26, living in a mid-sized city in Wisconsin, and had been on more than my fair share of awkward dates. I wasn't inexperienced. I'd been actively using dating apps for a while, but I'd definitely found myself in a few situations that made me question my judgment. This particular story started on Bumble. His name was Mark. He had that nerdy cute thing going on, glasses, messy hair, a soft smile that made him look harmless. His profile was filled with photos of him hiking, posing at national parks, and even dangling off a rock wall with a goofy expression. He gave off this outdoorsy, thrill-seeker energy that I found oddly comforting. I liked that he wasn't trying too hard. He messaged me first with a simple, "Hey, I noticed you like board games. What's your favorite?" I responded, and we started chatting from there. It was light, easy, and flirty without crossing into uncomfortable territory. After a couple of days, we exchanged numbers. Mark lived about 45 minutes away, which wasn't ideal, but not a deal breaker. He mentioned early on that he wasn't planning to be in my city anytime soon, so we didn't talk about meeting up right away. I appreciated that he wasn't pushing anything. It made me trust him a little more. Then about a week later, I got a text from him out of nowhere. "Hey, I'm actually in your city for work. Want to grab a drink tonight?" I was surprised, but pleasantly. I happened to be near downtown already, and told him I was just a few blocks away from a popular bar. He offered to pick me up, which should have been my first red flag. The bar was walking distance from where I was, and yet I said yes. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe I was caught up in the spontaneity of it. Maybe I just didn't want to walk alone. Either way, I accepted the ride. He showed up about 30 minutes later than expected, pulling up in a gray Toyota Camry that looked like a rental. He waved me over with a smile, and I got in. The second red flag hit the moment I buckled my seatbelt. He wasn't at the bar like he said he'd be. In fact, he didn't seem to know where he wanted to go at all. He kept saying things like, "I don't know if I like the vibe around here," and "Parking's a mess." I told him there was a bigger place about 20 minutes away with plenty of parking, and he agreed. We chatted a bit during the drive, but he was a terrible driver, jerky stops, swerving too close to the curb, and fiddling with his GPS way too much. I started to feel uncomfortable, but told myself to relax. Maybe he was just nervous. We got to the second bar, which was thankfully well lit and crowded. That gave me some relief. Being surrounded by people always makes me feel safer. We grabbed a booth, ordered drinks, and started talking. That's when he started pushing. I'm not a big drinker. I never have been. I told him ahead of time that I'd likely stick to one drink, maybe two, and he said that was fine. But the second I finished my first, he flagged the waitress without asking and ordered me another, stronger than the first. I politely declined it when it came and told him I was good. "Oh, come on," he said, nudging it toward me. "It's just a bar. We're not doing shots in a basement or anything." I laughed nervously and said no again, firmer this time. He didn't push again, but his whole demeanor shifted. He got quieter. He didn't make eye contact as much. But he didn't leave either. At one point, I saw someone I vaguely recognized, an old classmate from college. I waved, and they waved back. It wasn't anyone I kept in touch with, but I made the interaction obvious. Something in my gut told me that it was a good idea to let Mark know I wasn't here alone, even if technically I was. After a while, I told him I was ready to head out. I expected him to offer to drop me back where he picked me up. Instead, he said, "There's this coffee shop across the street. Let's stop by for a bit." That was strange. Neither of us was drunk. We didn't need to sober up. I didn't really want coffee, but I agreed anyway. I thought maybe if I played nice and didn't cause a scene, I could end the night without any tension. We got coffee and sat by the window. He started talking about the Airbnb he was staying at. It was, according to him, the coziest little place just outside the city, with a fireplace, a loft bed, and even board games. He said he had the whole place to himself. Then came the invitation. "You should come check it out," he said. "We could hang out, play a game or something. You don't have to stay the night." I declined. I gave every excuse I could think of. I had to be up early. I wasn't feeling great. I had laundry to do. He countered every one of them. "You can just crash on the couch. I've got a charger if your phone dies. I'll drive you back myself." It was exhausting. I finally agreed, only on the condition that he drive me back to my apartment first so I could grab some things. I wasn't planning on going to that Airbnb. I just needed an escape route. He smiled and said, "Sure, that works." But as we started driving, he made a detour. "Let's stop by a corner store real quick," he said. "I'll grab you some travel-sized stuff. That way you don't have to pick anything up." My blood went cold. That was not part of the plan. That was him trying to control the situation. I tried to stay calm. I acted like I was going along with it. I laughed and said, "Oh, I still need to grab my meds. You don't want to deal with me if I miss a dose." That seemed to work. He turned the car around. As we got closer to my neighborhood, I started scanning for a way to exit. I didn't want him to know where I lived. I didn't want him pulling into my driveway. I didn't want him knowing anything more about me than he already did. We stopped at a red light, just a few blocks from my apartment, and a group of people were crossing the street. I saw my chance. I opened the door and stepped out. "You know," I said, "I'm really not feeling great. I'll text you later, okay?" He looked furious. His jaw clenched. His hands tightened on the wheel. But I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked straight through a nearby park, taking a footpath that cars couldn't access. I didn't look back until I was out of sight. When I did, I saw him still sitting in the car, staring after me with this look I'll never forget. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even confusion. It was anger. Fury. Like I'd ruined his night. An hour later, I got a notification from Bumble. Mark had unmatched me. I checked my phone again, blocked on everything. He was gone. Looking back, I think he never expected to meet up in the first place. I think he told me he wasn't coming to my city, so that if anything went wrong, he could deny it. I think his plan all along was to isolate me, get me to that Airbnb, and, well, I don't know what his endgame was. But I'm glad I never found out. Since then, I've been a lot more careful. I still use dating apps, but I don't let anyone pick me up. I always meet in public. I tell at least 2 friends where I'm going and who I'm meeting. I keep my location shared with my sister. It might seem paranoid, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. The thing is, people are really good at pretending. They can present themselves as kind, normal, trustworthy. They can wear that mask for days, even weeks. But when you say no, that's when the real person shows up. This happened when I was 19, young enough to feel invincible, old enough to think I had a handle on life. I had just finished my first year of community college in Spokane, Washington, and was living at home for the summer. I wasn't particularly close with my family, and most of my high school friends had moved away or gone off to universities. So I spent a lot of time alone that summer, working part-time at a bookstore, reading too much fan fiction, and occasionally scrolling through dating apps when I couldn't sleep. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I wasn't even sure what I wanted. But sometimes I just wanted someone to talk to, someone outside my usual orbit. That's how I ended up matching with a guy named Kyle on an app called Hinge. Kyle was 24, according to his profile, and lived one town over in Cheney. His photos were normal, nothing flashy or filtered, just a few shots of him outdoors, one with a dog, and one where he was holding a coffee cup and smiling at the camera in a way that felt natural. His bio was short: love the outdoors, coffee, and good conversation. Let's skip the small talk. We started chatting on a Tuesday night. He was funny, a little sarcastic, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. He asked about my favorite books, which I always take as a good sign, and we bonded over a shared love for late-night diners and horror movies that are so bad they're good. We talked for 3 days straight. No red flags. No weird questions. He didn't come on too strong, just flirty enough to keep me interested. By Friday, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. I said maybe. I wasn't sure. I didn't have a car, and I wasn't about to ask my parents to drop me off at a stranger's place. But when he offered to get a motel room halfway between us, just to chill, talk, and maybe watch a movie, I hesitated. I know how that sounds. A motel room? With a guy I hadn't met? It's a terrible idea on paper. But he framed it like we'd just be hanging out. No pressure. It's just easier than me driving all the way to you, he wrote. And we can keep it low-key. I'll grab snacks and drinks, and you can bounce whenever. I told myself I'd be careful. I'd text my best friend Lana the address. I'd meet him in the parking lot first. I'd keep my phone fully charged. I even told myself I'd Uber home if anything felt off. I didn't want to admit it, but I was excited. Nervous, yeah, but excited. We agreed to meet that Saturday evening. He said he'd be at the Suncrest Lodge, a rundown motel just off the highway. I looked it up on Google Maps. It had 2 stars, a faded sign, and a lot of reviews that included the word roach. My gut twisted a little, but I told myself it was just a place to hang out. Not a 5-star experience. I got ready, maybe too carefully. Jeans, a fitted t-shirt, eyeliner just bold enough to say I cared but not enough to look try-hard. I grabbed my small canvas tote with a phone charger, gum, and a book, just in case things got awkward. Then I ordered an Uber. It was about a 30-minute ride. The driver didn't talk much, just played soft rock and adjusted the AC every few minutes. As we got closer, I started to feel uneasy. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot of the motel. The building itself looked worse than in the photos: peeling paint, overgrown bushes, and a flickering vacancy sign that buzzed like a dying fly. I texted Kyle. "Here. Outside the office." He responded immediately. "Room 214. Upstairs left corner." I looked toward the second floor. The stairway was rusted, the railing crooked. As I started to walk across the lot, I felt a tightness in my chest. Something about the building felt wrong, not just dirty or old off. Halfway up the stairs, I looked toward the corner room. The curtain was cracked open just an inch, and someone was watching me. He was older than Kyle, maybe mid-30s, pale, balding, wearing a white t-shirt and standing just far enough back that I could only make out part of his face. But he was staring straight at me. My stomach dropped. I froze on the third step. I texted Kyle again. "Hey, are you in the room?" He replied, "Yeah, just me." Come in, smiling face with smiling eyes. I didn't move. I wanted to believe it was him. That maybe the lighting was bad. That maybe he just looked different in person. But something was screaming at me not to go up those stairs. I replied, "You look different than your photos." He didn't respond. I waited. 30 seconds. Then a minute. Still nothing. I turned on my heel and started walking back down the stairs, as calmly as I could. I didn't run. I didn't want to draw attention. I just walked, heart pounding, back across the parking lot. When I reached the edge of the lot, I turned to look one last time. The curtain was fully open. The man at the window was still watching me. But now he was smiling. I pulled out my phone and called Lana. My voice shook as I spoke. "Can you track my location? I need you to stay on the phone until I get home." I ordered another Uber and waited by the gas station across the street, watching the motel the entire time. No one followed me. No one came outside. But I couldn't shake that image, the way he stared at me, as if he'd expected me to come inside. As if I'd disappointed him. I never heard from Kyle again. He unmatched me on the app. His profile disappeared completely. I reported it, but I never got a follow-up. I didn't know his last name. I didn't even have a real photo. For weeks, I kept checking the app under different usernames to see if I could find him again. I never did. But sometimes I still think about what would have happened if I'd gone into that room. Would he have locked the door behind me? Would someone else have been waiting inside? Would I have walked out again? I don't know. And I never want to find out. That experience changed the way I date. I don't go to strangers' homes or motel rooms. I meet in public. I share my location with Lana and 2 other trusted friends. I carry pepper spray now. I don't care if people think I'm paranoid. I don't care if they say I'm overreacting. I was a full-time nursing student juggling clinicals during the day, tutoring in the evenings, and trying to get at least 5 hours of sleep a night if I was lucky. My social life consisted of group texts and crying into takeout containers at 1 a.m. Still, every now and then, I'd get this itch, not just for companionship, but for a break from my routine. Something fun, unexpected, human. So one night, half out of boredom, half out of curiosity, I re-downloaded a dating app I'd sworn off 3 times already. This time, I told myself I wouldn't take it seriously. Just casual swiping. No expectations. That's when I matched with Adrian. Adrian was a few years older than me, 28, according to his profile. He had a confident smile, sharp cheekbones, and wore a variety of fleece jackets in his photos like he was always ready to summit a mountain or give a TED talk. His bio said, entrepreneur, investor, adventure seeker. Ask me about crypto. I rolled my eyes at that last part, but figured, hey, maybe he was just enthusiastic. We started chatting that night. He was clever, a little cocky, but not in an obnoxious way. He asked thoughtful questions and made me laugh at a time when I really needed a laugh. Within 24 hours, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. "I know this place downtown, best ribeye in the city," he wrote. My treat. I hesitated. I wasn't wild about meeting someone this fast, and I definitely didn't want to go to some pricey steakhouse in my nursing school hoodie. But he seemed eager, and something about the way he phrased it made me feel like he genuinely wanted to impress me. I agreed. We made plans for the following evening. The restaurant was one of those sleek, modern places with dark lighting, exposed brick, and booths that made you feel like you were sitting inside a jewelry box. I dressed up, nothing over the top, just a black blouse, jeans, and a little mascara. When I got there, Adrian was already sitting at a booth toward the back, scrolling through his phone. He stood when he saw me, smiled, and gave me a hug that lingered just half a second too long. "You're even prettier than your pictures," he said. "That's rare." I laughed politely and slid into the booth. He sat across from me, leaning forward like we were already in the middle of something. We ordered drinks. He got an old-fashioned. I got a ginger ale. No alcohol that night, not with a 6 a.m. shift the next morning. When the server came back, Adrian ordered the ribeye he'd hyped up and waved at me to go ahead. "Whatever you want." "Seriously," he said. I ordered a more modest sirloin. I didn't want to assume anything. The conversation started out fine. He talked about growing up in Vermont, how he moved to Colorado to build something real, and how he'd started investing in cryptocurrency before it was cool. He name-dropped a few obscure coins, rattled off terms like blockchain scalability and decentralized finance, and told me he made most of his income through strategic market swings. I nodded along, only half following. I'd heard of Bitcoin, sure, but I was more concerned about passing pharmacology than understanding crypto volatility. Then, about halfway through his steak, he looked at me very seriously and said, "You should really think about investing. It's not just for tech bros anymore. It's financial independence." I tried to laugh it off. I barely have enough for textbooks, let alone Bitcoin. He didn't laugh. "No, seriously," he said. "That's exactly why you should start. You're young. You could double your money in a year. I could help you set up a wallet tonight." I took a bite of my steak and changed the subject, but he kept circling back to it. "We could do it together," he said. "I'll walk you through it. I've got a portfolio I could show you. I just did a $3,000 trade last week." I smiled politely, trying not to let my discomfort show. Maybe he was just passionate. Maybe he was bad at reading the room. The check came finally. The server placed it in the center of the table, and Adrian made absolutely no move to touch it. I waited. He sipped the last of his drink, leaned back, and said, "I actually forgot my wallet at my place. Can you spot me? I'll Venmo you." I blinked. "Oh," I said. Yeah, sure." I paid $1.86 with tip. More than I'd spent on groceries that week. He didn't seem embarrassed. Didn't even pretend to feel bad. Just smiled and said, "You're a real one. I'll get the next one." We walked out together. I was trying to figure out what had just happened. He suggested going back to his apartment so he could show me his crypto dashboard. I declined. "Oh, come on," he said, grinning. "You'll love it. It's all color-coded." I told him I had an early shift. He looked disappointed but didn't push. When I got home, I checked my phone. No Venmo notification. No message. Nothing. I sent him a casual text. "Hey, let me know when you get a chance to send that over." He sent back, "Totally. Just got home. I'll do it in a bit." That bit turned into hours. Then a day. Then 2. I sent one more message. No reply. I checked the dating app. His profile was gone. Blocked. That's when it clicked. I wasn't the first. I probably wasn't the 5th. He'd done this before, charmed his way into a nice dinner, dropped some buzzwords to sound impressive, and vanished. I felt sick. Not just because I was out $86, but because I'd ignored the red flags. The crypto talk. The sudden dinner invitation. The convenient "forgot my wallet" excuse. I'd let my guard down. A few days later, I vented to a coworker about what happened. She blinked in surprise and said, "Wait, was his name Adrian? Fleece jacket, talks fast." Turns out, she'd matched with him too. Same pitch. Same restaurant. Same story. She didn't go through with the date, but she remembered him trying to get her to invest in a coin she'd never heard of. I felt embarrassed, but also weirdly validated. It wasn't just me. I filed a report on the dating app, flagged his photos, and moved on. But I never got that money back. Now, when I date, I follow a few simple rules. I meet in public. I pay for myself. And I don't listen to financial advice from a man in a fleece jacket holding a $14 cocktail. Dating can be fun, sure. But it's also a minefield. And sometimes the red flags aren't neon signs. Sometimes they're subtle. A missed cue. A confident smile. A wallet that never left home. So to anyone reading this, if your date starts talking about market trends before the appetizers arrive, maybe just ask for the check. Split it if you have to. Run if you must. But whatever you do, don't let your curiosity blind you to the fact that sometimes a steak dinner is just a scam in disguise. I've only told a few people this story, and even then, I've left out parts. Not because I'm ashamed, though I carried that for a while, but because it's hard to explain how quickly something can go from exciting to terrifying. How quickly trust can shatter. How easily one night can alter the way you look at every stranger, every first date, every moment of vulnerability. I was 18 at the time, a freshman at a small liberal arts college in Northern California. I'd grown up in a strict household. No dating, no drinking, no drugs, not even PG-13 movies after dark. So when I moved into my dorm and suddenly had freedom, I was desperate to feel normal, to catch up, to fit in. That's how I met Leo. We didn't meet through a dating app, which I guess is the only unusual thing about this story. We met at a party during my second week of school. It was one of those chaotic dorm raegers where someone's older brother managed to sneak in a keg, and no one knew whose room it was anymore. I wasn't drinking, still too nervous, but I remember standing in the hallway clutching a solo cup of ginger ale when Leo walked up and asked if I wanted to go outside for some air. He had this easy confidence. Tall, dark hair, a chipped tooth that made his smile seem boyish. He wore a flannel that looked like it had survived multiple bonfires and had that kind of warm, lived-in charm I used to associate with safety. We sat on the curb and talked about nothing, classes, how weird it was to be away from home, whether squirrels were secretly plotting to take over campus. He was funny, charming, gentle. I liked him right away. We started texting the next day, then hanging out between classes, then having late-night conversations while sitting on the grass outside the library. It wasn't intense or fast, it was slow and sweet. He never pressured me, never pushed. Just listened. About 3 weeks in, he invited me over to his apartment. "I've got the place to myself," he said. "Roommates are out for the weekend. You should come by. We'll watch a movie or something." I hesitated. It felt like a milestone, a shift. But I liked him. I trusted him. I said yes. He lived off campus in a squat beige building that looked like every other student apartment complex. Half-dead succulents on the balconies, a broken light over the stairwell, the faint smell of weed baked into the carpet. His place was small but tidy. A futon, a TV, a second-hand poster of Pulp Fiction on the wall. He offered me a soda, asked what movie I wanted to watch, and told me to make myself comfortable. We settled on something light, an animated film we both liked, and sat close but not touching. About halfway through, he paused the movie and pulled out a joint. "You cool with weed?" he asked. I paused. I'd smoked once with a friend in high school, but it barely did anything, and I'd never inhaled properly. Still, I wanted to seem chill. I wanted to be the kind of girl who didn't make things awkward. "Yeah," I said. "Sure." He lit it, took a long drag, and passed it to me. I copied him, trying to look like I knew what I was doing. I coughed a little, laughed, took another hit. It hit fast. Too fast. I remember blinking and feeling like the room had tilted. My limbs went warm and heavy. My thoughts started to slow, like someone had poured syrup into my brain. I tried to speak, to ask what strain it was, but the words came out wrong. Slurred. Like my mouth wasn't connected to my head anymore. That's when I got scared. I'd been high before. I knew what a light buzz felt like. This wasn't that. This was something else. I looked at Leo. He was watching me. Not concerned. Not confused. Just watching. "Hey," I said, or tried to. "What was in that?" He smiled. "Just weed," he said. "Relax. You're fine." But I wasn't. My skin was buzzing. My heart was pounding in my chest, too fast, too loud. I tried to stand up and stumbled. The room swam around me. I grabbed the edge of the futon to steady myself. "I think I need to go," I said. He didn't move. "Babe," he said, "you're overreacting. Just chill. You're safe." Then he stood up and stepped between me and the door. That's when the panic really set in. I don't remember everything clearly, just fragments like shattered glass on the floor of my memory. I remember him touching my arm, guiding me back to the futon. I remember feeling like my body didn't belong to me. I remember trying to say no, and not knowing if the word even made it past my lips. But I do remember fighting. Somewhere in that haze, some primal part of me kicked in. I shoved him. Hard. He stumbled backward, surprised. I grabbed my tote bag, thankfully still near me, and bolted toward the door. He tried to stop me, reached for my wrist. I screamed. Loud. It wasn't a word. Just a sound. Raw and sharp. He let go. I ran barefoot down the stairs and out into the street. I didn't stop until I was 2 blocks away, crouched behind a parked car, trying to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I called my friend Jenna, the only person I felt safe telling. She picked up on the second ring. I need help, I said. I think he laced it. I need to get home. She didn't ask questions, just told me to drop a pin and stay where I was. She showed up 15 minutes later, wrapped me in a hoodie, and drove me back to my dorm. I didn't tell the RA. I didn't file a report. I was too scared, too ashamed, too unsure of what exactly had happened. I kept thinking, maybe I overreacted. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it really was just strong weed. But deep down I knew. I never saw Leo again. He didn't text. He didn't try to explain or apologize. He just disappeared. And I let him. For months, I couldn't be alone in a room with a guy without flinching. I couldn't relax at parties. I couldn't smoke again, not even with friends I trusted. The smell alone made my skin crawl. I started seeing a counselor at school. At first, I just told her I'd had a bad experience. But eventually the whole story came out. She didn't judge me. She didn't ask why I went there in the first place. She just listened. That helped. Time helped too. But I still carry it with me. That night taught me how quickly things can spiral. How a guy who seems sweet, who listens, who takes his time, can still cross a line the moment you're vulnerable. And how easy it is to doubt yourself when that happens. So here's what I want to say to anyone who's ever been in a situation like mine. It's not your fault. You didn't ask for it, because you went to his apartment. You didn't lead him on, because you flirted. And you didn't overreact, because you ran. You protected yourself. You survived. And that matters. Now I always meet in public. I don't accept drinks or smokes from people I barely know. I trust my instincts, even when they seem inconvenient. And I share my location with Jenna when I go out, every time. I'd been single for about a year after the end of a quiet, low-drama relationship that just fizzled out. I wasn't in a rush to date again, but eventually, I got tired of eating takeout alone and watching couples hold hands in grocery stores. So I downloaded a few apps, Hinge, Bumble, the usual rotation, and started swiping. Most of it was forgettable. A few conversations that went nowhere, a couple of awkward first dates that ended in dead air. I was about ready to give up again when I matched with Rachel. Her profile caught my attention right away. She had this warm, open smile in every photo. Her hair was a mess of curls, and one picture showed her holding a violin in what looked like a subway station. Her bio was short: musician, dog lover, collector of weird mugs. She messaged me first, which I liked. So, are you more of a coffee or tea person? I said coffee, she said herbal tea, and we spent the next few days arguing playfully about caffeine and how it ruins your soul, her words. She was clever, funny, a little chaotic in a charming way. We moved to texting pretty quickly. She sent voice notes, which no one ever does, and they made me laugh out loud. She called me sir, ironically, and claimed she could beat me in Mario Kart blindfolded. I liked her. A lot. More than I expected to. After about a week of texting and late-night calls, she suggested we meet. She said there was an outdoor concert happening at a park near her place. Local bands, food trucks, casual vibes. It sounded perfect. We picked a Saturday, and I even ironed a shirt, which should tell you how seriously I was taking it. The day of the concert, around 3 p.m., she texted me. Bad news, concert's canceled. Rain check. The sky outside was clear. No rain. I asked what happened. She said the venue messed something up with permits. Total mess, she wrote. But you should still come over. I've got wine. And Mario Kart. I hesitated. I'd been looking forward to something public, something with other people around. But we'd been talking nonstop for over a week. I felt like I knew her, and I really wanted to meet her. I said sure. Her apartment was in a quiet part of town, tucked above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and burnt sugar. She buzzed me in, and I climbed the narrow staircase to the second floor. She opened the door before I could knock. She looked just like her pictures, same smile, same curls, wearing a t-shirt that said dog hair is my glitter. She hugged me like we were old friends. Her place was small but cozy. Books stacked everywhere, plants in mismatched pots, a huge dog bed in the corner, but no dog in sight. She poured us each a glass of red wine and put on some jazz in the background. We sat on the couch and talked for hours. It was easy, effortless. Eventually, we did play Mario Kart. She wasn't lying, she was good. She beat me 3 times in a row and called me rookie every time. At some point, I realized it was past midnight. I stood up to leave, and she looked genuinely disappointed. Stay, she said. You've had wine. Just crash on the couch. I paused. She wasn't wrong. I'd had a couple glasses. And I was tired. Okay, I said. Just the couch. She gave me a blanket, turned off the lights, and headed to her room. I lay there for a few minutes, scrolling through my phone, thinking about how well the night had gone. Then I heard her door open. She walked back out, barefoot, and sat on the edge of the couch. I can't sleep, she said. You're too far away. I laughed, unsure what she meant. Then she leaned in and kissed me. It caught me off guard, but I kissed her back. It was soft, slow, and then suddenly not. She pulled away and said, "Come to bed." I hesitated. It's not that I didn't want to. I did. But something about the way she said it, flat, almost robotic, made my stomach twist. I told her I was okay on the couch. She stared at me for a second, then stood up and went back to her room without a word. I lay awake for a long time after that. In the morning, she was back to normal. Smiling. Making coffee. Teasing me about snoring, which I don't do. I thanked her for the night and said I'd text her later. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You better." I walked home feeling a little off, but mostly okay. That night, I got a text from her. "Miss you already." I smiled and replied, "Had a great time. Let's do it again soon." That's when things got weird. Over the next few days, she started texting constantly. Like every hour. If I didn't respond right away, she'd send more. "Hey, you okay? Did I do something wrong?" I told her work was busy. She said she understood. But the messages didn't stop. Then came the photos. At first, they were normal, selfies, her dog, a new mug she found at a thrift store. Then they got strange. A picture of my building, taken from across the street. A blurry photo of me leaving work. "You look so serious today," face blowing a kiss. I didn't know what to say. I asked her if she'd been in the neighborhood. She replied, "I just missed you. Is that weird?" I didn't respond. The next day, I came home to find a small package at my door. Inside was a mug. White with black letters that read, "I'm watching you." No note. No name. Just the mug. I blocked her number. She made a new one. Texted me again. "Why are you doing this? I thought we had something real." I blocked that one too. That night, I woke up to banging on my front door. 3 hard knocks, then silence. I looked through the peephole. No one. I called the building manager the next morning. He said the security cameras didn't catch anything. For a few days, things were quiet. Then I got a message request on Instagram from a new account with no profile picture. "Still think about you." I didn't respond. Weeks went by. I started to relax. Then one night, I was out with friends, finally starting to feel like myself again. I got home around 1 a.m., opened my door, and found her sitting on my couch. I froze. She smiled. Like nothing was wrong. "You left the window unlocked," she said. I didn't know what to do. I was shaking. "Rachel, you need to leave," I said. She laughed. "I just wanted to talk. You don't have to be scared." I backed toward the door and told her I was calling the police. She stood up, suddenly furious. "You're just like the others," she said. "Liars. Cowards." She grabbed a glass from the table and threw it at the wall. It shattered. I ran out and called 911. She was still screaming when the officers arrived. They arrested her. She kicked one of them. Later, I found out she had a history of this. Other guys. Same pattern. But no one had pressed charges. I did. She ended up with a restraining order. I moved a month later. And I haven't dated since. So this happened when I was 20, working the closing shift at a Taco Bell in a mid-sized city in Michigan. I was in college, taking night classes and working part-time just to keep up with rent and tuition. It wasn't glamorous, obviously, but it paid the bills, and the crew I worked with was decent. We had a rhythm, headphones in the kitchen, jokes over the headset, and just enough chaos to keep things interesting. I'd been single for a while and mostly stayed off dating apps, but every once in a while I'd get bored and re-download Tinder or Bumble. Mostly for entertainment. Swipe a little during slow periods, maybe match with someone, and then delete the app again by the end of the week. That's when I matched with Riley. She was cute. Blonde, sharp chin, kind of a cool aesthetic. Her profile said she was 22 and into hiking, iced coffee, and deep conversations at 2 a.m. I messaged her something dumb about not being a hiker, but being very skilled in the art of late-night tacos. She replied in less than a minute. "You had me at tacos." We started talking. Nothing serious, just casual back and forth. She was easy to talk to, flirty without being over the top, and asked a lot of questions about my job. Like a lot. Do you usually work nights? Which Taco Bell? Do you take your breaks around the same time every shift? I figured she was just trying to make conversation. Maybe she was bored too. I told her I usually worked 4 p.m. to close, and she joked that she'd have to swing by one night and try my legendary crunch wraps. I laughed, said she should, and didn't think much of it. A few days later, I was working a Friday night shift. It was slow, just me on headset and one guy in the back doing prep. Around 10:30 p.m., I got a notification. Riley had messaged me. "Hey, are you working tonight?" I replied, "Yup, just about to start cleaning up." She sent back a winky face and said, "I might come say hi." I smiled at my phone, kind of amused. I didn't expect her to actually show up. I figured it was just playful texting. About 15 minutes later, a silver SUV pulled into the drive-thru. I was halfway through wiping down the counter when the headset buzzed. I did my usual spiel. "Welcome to Taco Bell. Go ahead with your order when you're ready." There was a pause, and then a voice said, "Hey, is this Josh?" I froze. It was a woman's voice, soft but very clear. "Yeah," I said cautiously. "I thought so," she said. "Recognized your voice. It's Riley." I felt a weird chill crawl up my neck. I hadn't told her which Taco Bell I worked at. There were at least 5 in the area. I never gave her the address. She figured it out. I tried to play it cool. "Oh hey," I said. "Didn't think you'd actually come through." She laughed. "I got bored. Thought I'd surprise you." The speaker crackled. I waited for her to order, but she didn't say anything. Just silence. "You want something?" I asked. Another pause. Then, "Nah, just wanted to see you." I told her to pull around. She did. I stepped up to the window, and there she was, same girl from the pictures, slightly Messier hair, eyes wide like she was excited or nervous or both. She leaned toward the window like we were old friends. For a second, I didn't know what to say. I was still trying to wrap my head around how she'd found me. She smiled and said, "You look just like I imagined." I laughed awkwardly and said thanks. She didn't order anything. Just sat there, engine running, staring at me like I was supposed to say something meaningful. I said, "Well, nice seeing you. I should probably get back to it." She didn't move. Instead, she said, "So, when do you get off?" I told her it'd be after midnight. She nodded slowly, like she was filing that away. "Cool. Maybe I'll come back then." I smiled, trying to make it polite and non-committal. "Maybe." She drove off. I stood there for a second, headset still on, just processing how weird that was. I told the guy in the back about it, and he just raised an eyebrow. "Dude, she found you at work without an address? That's not cute. That's stalker level." I laughed it off. "Nah, it's probably just a coincidence." But it wasn't. The next night, I was working again. Same shift. Around 10 p.m., same SUV rolls through the drive-thru. This time, she doesn't say anything when I greet her. Just pulls straight to the window. I open it, and she says, "You didn't answer my message." Which was true. She had messaged me the night before after she left, something like, "You're even cuter in person." I hadn't replied. I figured I'd let it fizzle out. I told her I'd just been busy. She stared at me for a second, and then said, "So are you seeing someone?" I shook my head. "No, just not really looking for anything right now." She nodded slowly, like she was disappointed but not surprised. Then she said, "You shouldn't lie to people. It's rude." And with that, she drove off. The next day, she showed up again. This time, she came inside. It was dead quiet, just me at the front, scrolling through orders. I looked up, and there she was, standing by the counter like she'd been there for a while. She asked for a water cup. I gave it to her. She didn't leave. Instead, she sat at a table in the corner and watched me. Didn't eat. Didn't drink. Just sat there. I texted my manager, who was out back on a break, and said, "Hey, can you come up front? That girl from the drive-thru is here again." He came out, took one look at her, and said, "That's the 3rd time she's been here this week, right?" I nodded. He walked over and asked her if everything was okay. She smiled sweetly and said, "Just waiting for a friend." 15 minutes later, she left. That night, I blocked her on Tinder. The next day, she came back. This time, she didn't speak. Just pulled through the drive-thru, stared at me through the window, and then drove off. It was like a game to her. Like she was trying to see how far she could push it before I snapped. Finally, my manager had enough. He waited until she came inside again, this time during a rush, and asked her to leave. Told her she wasn't allowed to hang out unless she was ordering food. She looked at him like he'd insulted her personally. You don't have to be mean, she said. I'm just here to see my friend. He told her again, firmly, to leave. She did. Later that night, I checked my phone. She'd blocked me. No messages. No profile. Gone. Like it never happened. But I still think about her sometimes. The way she looked at me, like she knew me. Like I owed her something. Like we were already in a relationship I hadn't agreed to. I was the kind of girl who watched romantic comedies every weekend and dreamed about whirlwind love stories that started with a look across a crowded room. But in reality, I'd never had a serious relationship, just a lot of texting and awkward hallway smiles. It was the week leading up to Valentine's Day, and I was feeling especially single. My social feed was full of couples posting cheesy countdowns, heart-shaped pancakes, and my person captions. I told myself I didn't care, but I did. I wanted someone to think about me. Just for a day. So when I matched with a guy named Connor on a low-traffic dating app one probably shouldn't have even been on, I fell into it fast. He said he was 18, a senior at another high school nearby. He had that scruffy, slightly older look, longish hair, a jawline that made him look like he belonged in a CW show, and a smirk that made it hard to tell if he was joking or just confident. His messages were casual at first, then flirty. He called me cutie by the second day. Normally that would have made me cringe, but I was craving attention, and he gave it to me. He said all the things I wanted to hear at the exact moment I was vulnerable enough to believe them. By February 13th, he asked if I wanted to hang out the next evening, Valentine's Day. I don't want to do anything cheesy, he said. Just chill. Drive around, talk, maybe grab milkshakes or something. I hadn't made any plans. I wasn't expecting a Valentine's Day date, especially not with someone who seemed this into me. I asked where we'd meet, and he said he'd pick me up. That gave me pause. I'd never met him in person. We'd only been talking for a few days. But he was charming. Said all the right things. And part of me wanted the story, wanted to say I had a Valentine too. So I agreed. I told my parents I was going to a movie with a friend. I didn't want to explain who Connor was. I didn't want the questions. I got dressed in my best cool but casual outfit, jeans, a cropped sweater, and just enough makeup to make me feel older. He texted when he arrived. I walked outside and saw him in a beat-up navy blue sedan idling in front of my house. The windows were tinted, and the passenger door didn't open right away. I stood there awkward until he leaned over and finally unlocked it. When I got in, I noticed a couple of things right away. First, he looked older than his photos. Not by a lot, but enough. Maybe not 18. Maybe 20, even 21. Second, his car smelled like stale fast food and something else I couldn't place at first, something sharp, almost metallic. But I smiled and said hi. He didn't say much at first. Just nodded and drove off. I thought we were getting milkshakes. I asked when we passed the main strip with all the fast food joints. We will, he said. I just want to show you something first. We started heading away from town. I kept trying to make conversation, asking about school, music, his plans for next year. But he was distracted, vague. He kept checking his mirrors, changing the radio station, and glancing down at his phone. I felt the shift before I understood it. That feeling when the air gets too quiet. When your gut whispers that something isn't right. Where are we going? I asked. It's just a cool spot, he said. Chill. You'll like it. The road got narrower. Less streetlights. Houses farther apart. Eventually, we turned down a side road that led into a half-built housing development. Just dirt lots, a few unfinished structures, and chain-link fences. I sat up straighter. My heart started to pick up. Connor, can you take me home? I said. He didn't answer. Connor. Still nothing. I reached for my phone, but I had no service out there. Just a dead bar and that mocking SOS-only message in the corner. He pulled the car over near one of the unfinished houses and turned off the engine. Then he looked at me. Not smiling. Not joking. Just quiet. I thought we'd hang out here for a bit, he said. I didn't move. Didn't speak. He leaned closer. You're so pretty. You don't even know. I laughed nervously. Thanks, but seriously, can you take me home? He shook his head slowly. Why are you acting like this? I thought you liked me. I felt the panic rising in my chest. I don't feel comfortable out here, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I just want to go home. He sighed and leaned back in his seat, like I was being difficult. You're not like the other girls, he said. I thought you were cool. I didn't respond. I looked around, no lights, no other cars, just empty plots and shadows. My hands were shaking in my lap. Then I said the one thing I could think of that might work. I'm on my period. He blinked. What? I'm on my period, I repeated. Like bad. Cramps. I feel sick. I shouldn't have come out. He looked disgusted. Like I'd just ruined something. He muttered something under his breath and started the car. We sat in silence as he drove back toward town. Every second felt like an hour. I kept my hand on the door handle, ready to jump if I had to. I kept telling myself, just don't piss him off. Get back to civilization. Then run. When we reached the main road, I saw the sign for the old train station, one that had been shut down for years but still had a parking lot and a few working streetlights. Can you drop me there? I asked. My friend's picking me up. He didn't argue. He pulled into the lot and stopped the car. I opened the door, got out, and shut it behind me without looking back. He waited there for a second, like he was expecting something. Then he drove off. I stood under one of the flickering lights and called my friend Natalie, who picked up on the third ring. I need you to come get me, I said. Now. She didn't ask questions, just asked where I was. I didn't cry until I got in her car. I told her everything on the ride home. Every detail. Every second of fear. She held my hand the whole drive. I never heard from Connor again. He unmatched me, disappeared from the app, like he'd never existed. I couldn't find his full name, couldn't report him. I didn't even know what school, if any, he really went to. All I had was a face I could still picture too clearly, and a voice that still chilled me when I thought about it. For a while I blamed myself. For going. For lying to my parents. For not asking more questions. But over time I realized something. The only mistake I made was trusting someone who didn't deserve it. I was 22 when this happened, living in a small apartment just outside of Minneapolis and working as a barista while I finished my degree. I'd been out of the closet for a couple of years by then, and I was slowly figuring out what dating looked like as a queer woman. I wasn't looking for anything serious, mostly just meeting people, talking, maybe going on the occasional date to see if something clicked. That's how I met Jenna. We matched on Tinder one night in early spring. Her profile said she was 23. She had this quiet confidence in her photos, dark hair, a few piercings, a half smile that made her look like she was always a few steps ahead of everyone else. Her bio said, "I make killer playlists and terrible life choices." We started talking that night. She was funny, a little dark, and quick-witted in a way that made it easy to keep texting. She mentioned her love for old horror movies and how she was learning to tattoo fruit before moving on to skin. I told her that was weirdly charming. She said I was weirdly charming too. After about a week of messaging, she asked if I wanted to meet in person. I said yes. We met at a coffee shop near campus, neutral territory, just in case. She was 10 minutes late and didn't apologize, which annoyed me a little, but she smiled when she walked in and made a joke about caffeine being her only personality trait, and I let it slide. In person, she was a little more awkward than she was over text, but that just made her seem more human. We talked for an hour, then another. She asked questions, listened when I answered. We laughed about how terrible most dating app experiences were. By the end of the night, I was interested. Not head over heels, but curious enough to want to see her again. We hung out twice more, once at a bookstore, once at her place to watch a movie. Nothing happened physically beyond kissing, but there was a vibe. Something slow burning. I liked it. Then one night we were talking about school just casually, and I asked her what her major had been. She paused. "I didn't actually go to college," she said. "I thought about it, but I'm not really a school person." That didn't bother me. I told her that. Then she said, "I should probably tell you something else." I waited. "I'm not 23, she said. "I'm 20. I blinked. She rushed to explain. Said she only put 23, so her profile would match with older people. That she didn't think it mattered. That she wasn't trying to be shady. I didn't say much. I just nodded slowly and said I needed some time to think. Because here's the thing, 20 and 22 isn't a huge gap. But lying about your age on a dating app, especially when it's one of the first things people see, feels like a violation. Like you made a choice to misrepresent yourself, so you could get something you might not have otherwise. I didn't message her for a few days. She messaged me 3 times. Then 5. Then she started liking all my Instagram posts. Old ones. From 2 years ago. My story views were flooded with her username. She sent a DM that just said, "I miss you." I didn't respond. That's when it got weird. I matched with someone new on Tinder a week later. Different profile, different name. But the pictures looked familiar, filtered, edited, but clearly Jenna. The bio said, "Not afraid to call out liars." I unmatched immediately. Then another profile popped up 2 days later. Same person. Slightly different name. Bio, looking for someone who doesn't ghost. And then another. This one used my actual name in the bio. Ever been ghosted by someone named my name? Yeah, me too. I reported the profile. It was taken down within a day. But another one appeared later that week. This one had no photos. Just a blank profile with my initials in the bio. I stopped using the app altogether. It was like playing whack-a-mole. Every time I tried to move on, she popped up again. Watching. Waiting. Making me feel like I couldn't use dating apps without being found. Eventually, I blocked her on everything, Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. I never responded to any of her messages. Eventually, she stopped. But for months after that, I'd get this tight feeling in my chest every time I saw a new profile photo on Tinder that looked vaguely familiar. Every time I posted something, I wondered if she was watching from a burner account. If she was still thinking about me. Still angry that I didn't want to keep seeing someone who had lied to me. It made dating harder for a long time. Because once someone crosses that line, once they decide they're entitled to your attention, even after you've said no, it's hard to feel safe again. It's not the age difference that stuck with me. It's the lie, the manipulation, the way she tried to punish me for walking away. I hadn't dated in almost 6 years. After my divorce, everything in my world became about my daughter, Emily. She was 9 when her dad and I split, and I remember thinking back then that I'd just focus on being a mom. I didn't want to bring anyone new into her life unless it was serious, and honestly, I didn't think I had the energy to date again. But people change. Time passes. And by the time Emily was 15, I started thinking maybe, just maybe, it was okay to want something for myself again. A few women at church encouraged me to try online dating. They said it was a good way to meet people without committing to anything too fast. So one night, I downloaded an app, filled out a profile, and started swiping. I wasn't expecting much, just some conversations, maybe coffee with someone who didn't make me want to claw my eyes out. That's how I met Jason. He was 42, polite, clean-cut, and said he worked in IT. His profile talked about faith, family, and hiking, 3 things that felt safe. Our first phone call lasted almost 2 hours. He had that calm, steady voice that made you feel like you could trust him. He asked about my work, my hobbies, and even what kind of music Emily and I liked to listen to in the car. Most guys didn't even mention my daughter. Jason brought her up right away, but not in a weird way. At first, it felt considerate, like he understood that dating a single mom meant acknowledging the kid came first. Our first date was lunch at a cafe near the church. He showed up early, brought flowers, and told me I looked beautiful in the most sincere, unassuming way. I remember thinking, maybe I finally met someone kind. He didn't try anything physical, didn't push, just smiled, paid for our meal, and said he'd love to see me again. We went on 3 more dates. Coffee, a walk at a local park, dinner at a place I'd been too nervous to go to alone. He never raised any red flags. He didn't rush things, didn't love bomb me. He was just nice, thoughtful, steady. Then he asked if he could come to our church's spring potluck. I hesitated. It wasn't that I didn't want him to meet people. I just didn't want to mix things too fast. But he said he'd love to meet the community that mattered to me, and I figured one public event couldn't hurt. I told Emily he'd be there, and she just shrugged. Cool, I guess, she said. She wasn't thrilled, but she wasn't upset either. The night of the potluck, Jason showed up with a crock pot of homemade chili and a plate of cornbread muffins. He wore a button-up shirt and brought extra napkins. Everyone loved him. The pastor shook his hand and joked that he was finally glad to see me smiling again. Jason laughed and said all the right things. I noticed him talking to a few other parents, then to some of the teens helping with cleanup. At one point, I saw him sitting at a folding table with Emily and 2 other girls from the youth group. He was smiling, relaxed, and they were laughing at something he'd said. I remember thinking, this is good. This feels normal. Later that night, after we got home, Emily went straight to her room. She was quiet, but I figured she was just tired from helping out. About an hour later, she knocked on my bedroom door. Can I talk to you? She asked. I nodded, putting down my book. She sat on the edge of my bed, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. She didn't look scared exactly, but she looked uncomfortable. What's up? I asked. It's about Jason, she said. He was weird. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? She hesitated. Then she said, he kept asking me questions. Like not normal ones. My stomach tightened. What kind of questions? She looked down. He asked if I had a boyfriend. If I'd ever kissed anyone. Then he asked if I had any pictures of myself from summer camp. In a swimsuit. I stared at her. And when I said no, he said, that's okay. Bet you look cute no matter what you wear. I didn't speak for a second. I was trying to stay calm, trying to keep my face neutral. Did he touch you? I asked. No, she said quickly. He didn't touch me. But it was gross. And he kept looking at me weird. Not like a normal adult. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me, I said. You did the right thing. She looked scared. You're not mad. Of course not, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. She hugged me, then went back to her room. I sat there for a long time after she left. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this cold, still rage settle in my chest. I grabbed my phone and opened our text threads. I typed, we need to talk. Now. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. I opened the dating app. His profile was gone. I checked his social media, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Deleted. Wiped clean. I checked the number he'd been using. Disconnected. Everything gone. It was like he'd never existed. I called Pastor Reed the next morning and asked if he remembered getting Jason's last name or where he said he worked. He said no. Just remembered he worked in tech and had recently moved from Ohio. I called the police. Filed a report. Gave them everything I had, his phone number, the photos from his dating profile, the messages we'd exchanged. They were polite but not hopeful. Said it was difficult to trace someone without a last name or confirmed identity. Said he hadn't technically committed a crime, but they'd keep the report on file. I told the church. Told the parents of the other teens who'd been at the potluck. Everyone was horrified. A few of them asked why I hadn't vetted him more carefully. I didn't bother defending myself, because the truth was I had, and it still wasn't enough. It's been over a year since that night. Emily's okay. She talks openly about it now. Says it taught her to trust her instincts, to speak up, no matter how nice someone seems. I'm proud of her. I still get angry sometimes, thinking about how close it came, thinking about what could have happened if she hadn't said anything. I took a long break from dating after my last relationship ended. It wasn't dramatic, just one of those slow, quiet dissolves where you both realize you're not the right people for each other. After that, I focused on work, tried a few new hobbies, and told myself I wasn't in a rush. But after about a year, the loneliness started creeping in. I missed simple things, ordering takeout together, inside jokes, someone to debrief with after a long day. So I re-downloaded a dating app and matched with Rachel. She was pretty in a soft, unassuming way. Her photos were mostly candid, reading in a hammock, laughing with a dog I assumed was hers, hair tied up, minimal makeup. Her profile said she worked in marketing and loved horror movies, baking, and fixing broken furniture. We hit it off quickly. She was funny in a dry, sometimes biting way, and we had long text threads about everything from childhood snacks to whether AI would make us obsolete. She never came on too strong, and I appreciated that. It felt easy, natural. Our first date was at a little Thai place near my apartment. She wore a hoodie and jeans and had a chipped black nail on her thumb. I remember that detail because she kept fidgeting with it while we talked. It was clear she was nervous, but once we started eating, she loosened up. We laughed a lot that night. She told me I had kind eyes. I told her she had a weirdly encyclopedic knowledge of 1970s slasher films. We had 2 more dates after that. Coffee and a walk in the park. Then dinner at a ramen spot. Each time, things felt better. It was casual but hopeful. By the 3rd date, we were sitting in my apartment, watching an old horror movie she'd brought over on DVD. She teased me for not owning a Blu-ray player. When the movie ended, she suggested we make popcorn. I went to the kitchen, and when I came back, she was standing in the middle of my living room, staring at a photo of me and my ex. You still have this up? I paused. Oh, yeah, I guess I forgot about it. She turned to look at me, her expression unreadable. Do you still talk to her? No, I said honestly. We ended things a long time ago. She nodded slowly. Then she asked, did you cheat on her? I blinked. What? No. Rachel's face stayed neutral, but her voice changed, got flatter. You sure about that? I laughed awkwardly. Yeah, I'm sure. She didn't say anything, just walked into the kitchen and made the popcorn like nothing had happened. I tried to shake it off. We sat back down, and she curled up next to me on the couch. Everything seemed fine again. We finished the snack, watched a second movie, and eventually, around midnight, I offered to call her a ride home. "Can I stay?" she asked. It caught me off guard. Sure. If you want to." She nodded and went to the bathroom to brush her teeth with a travel brush she'd brought in her bag, like she'd planned to stay all along. I gave her a spare shirt to sleep in, and we both got into bed. She fell asleep instantly. I didn't. Something about the night felt off. I woke up around 4 a.m. to the sound of something crashing. I jumped out of bed and ran toward the noise. In the living room, I found her holding my laptop, well, what was left of it. The screen was shattered, the keyboard dangling by a cord. She'd smashed it against the floor. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled. She turned to me, eyes wide and wild. "You lied to me," she said. "You're cheating." I saw the messages. "What messages?" She pointed at the broken laptop. "Don't pretend. You were going to break my heart." I took a step back toward the door. "Rachel, you need to leave. Now." She dropped the laptop and stormed past me into the bedroom. I debated calling the police. My hands were shaking. Then I heard a sound, metal clanging. I rushed in. She was standing by the window, holding a hammer. One I kept in a drawer for hanging things. I didn't even know she'd found it. "I'm going to jump," she said calmly. "If you call anyone, I'll do it." She wasn't crying. She wasn't yelling. Just standing there barefoot, in my shirt, holding a hammer and staring at the street below. I froze. I didn't know what to say, how to de-escalate something that had gone so sideways so fast. "Rachel," I said slowly, "I don't want you to get hurt. Please put the hammer down." She looked at me. "Do you love me?" I didn't respond. She repeated it louder. "Do you love me?" I shook my head. "I don't know what this is, but it's not love." She stood there for a long moment, then dropped the hammer to the floor and collapsed into herself, sobbing. I called 911. She didn't resist when the paramedics came. Just sat on the floor, rocking slightly, whispering something I couldn't understand. The cops asked me a few questions, took a statement, said she'd be evaluated. I never saw her again. I later found out from a mutual connection, someone who recognized her from a photo I showed, that she'd done something similar before. Different guy, same pattern. Short relationship, sudden obsession, explosion. No one had pressed charges. I didn't either. I just wanted to move on. It took me months to feel comfortable inviting anyone over again. Longer to stop checking my door locks 3 times before bed. I still flinch a little when I hear something crash in the night. I keep the broken laptop in my closet, not because I want to remember her, but because I don't want to forget how quickly things can turn. How someone can seem completely fine until they're holding a hammer in your bedroom, accusing you of things you didn't do. And how sometimes the scariest part of dating isn't being hurt. It's realizing how much you didn't see coming. I was 19 and stupidly optimistic about love. I'd just finished my first semester of college and was spending the holiday break back home, bored and glued to my phone. That's when I matched with Lily. She was cute, big eyes, dyed pink hair, a nose ring, and this chaotic energy in her messages that I found kind of addicting. She said she was 20, lived one town over, and was into poetry, punk bands, and obscure horror films. We clicked fast. I stayed up late just to talk to her. She made me laugh. She made me feel seen. After a week, I asked if she wanted to meet. She dodged the question, said she was busy, then sick, then dealing with family stuff. I didn't push. I figured, okay, maybe she's shy. Maybe she needs time. But then she disappeared. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. Her profile vanished, and the number I'd been texting stopped working. I was disappointed, sure, but I told myself it was just an online thing. Nothing real. 2 weeks later, she came back. New number. New profile pic. Same girl. She said she'd missed me. That she'd been scared of how fast things were moving. That she still wanted to see me, if I was open to it. I was. God help me, I was. She asked for my address. Said she wanted to send me something small. A peace offering, she called it. At first I hesitated, but I gave it to her. I was 19 and tired of being alone. I wanted to believe in something. The package arrived 2 days later. Small box. No return label. Inside was a kitchen knife. Not new. Not clean. The blade was stained dark and the handle was chipped. Wrapped around it was a note, handwritten in slanted, messy letters. He said you were his. Now he knows better. Lily's husband. My whole body locked up. I reread the note 3 times. I checked the box again, nothing else inside. I looked through the peephole, checked the windows. Nothing. Just the ordinary quiet of a winter afternoon. I called the police. They took the knife, the note, and my statement. Said it could be a prank. Said they'd look into it. But without a return address or a confirmed identity, there wasn't much to go on. I deleted everything, texts, the app, my social media for a while. I changed my number. I didn't sleep well for weeks. I never heard from her again. Whoever she was, whatever game she'd been playing, she vanished for good. But I still think about it. About how close I felt to someone who never existed. About how quickly affection can twist into threat. And about how easily I gave my address to someone I'd never seen in person. I don't do online dating anymore. Not because I'm bitter. Because I'm careful. We matched online, exchanged a few messages, and quickly realized we had a great rapport. He was funny, clever, and refreshingly attentive. He said he lived in a town not far from mine, which made meeting up a breeze. After a couple of phone calls that lasted into the early hours of the morning, I found myself genuinely excited. He seemed normal. When he suggested dinner for our first date, I eagerly agreed. The plan was simple. Meet at a cozy little restaurant, have a nice meal, and see if the chemistry we'd built online translated to the real world. I should have known it was too good to be true. The first red flag was waiting for me at the restaurant door. He looked different from his photos, not just a little older or a few pounds heavier, but almost unrecognizable. I'm not one to judge too harshly. Online photos can be deceiving. But this wasn't a case of bad lighting or strategic angles. He looked like he'd aged a decade since the pictures were taken. His nervous smile didn't help, and I felt a flicker of unease. Still, I told myself to stay open-minded. After all, I'd come this far. What was the harm in giving him a chance? I wish I'd turned around and left. We hadn't even ordered drinks before the conversation took a hard left turn into Crazy Town. I like you, he said, leaning forward across the table, his voice low and deliberate. His eyes bore into mine with an intensity that made me instinctively lean back. We should have a baby. I blinked, certain I'd misheard him. I'm sorry, what? You heard me, he said, completely unfazed by my reaction. Are you ovulating? For a second, I thought this had to be a joke, some bizarre attempt at humor gone horribly wrong. But there was no laughter in his expression, no trace of levity. He was deadly serious. I froze, my mind racing. How do you even respond to something like that? I forced a strained laugh, hoping to diffuse the tension. That's not really first date conversation. But he didn't back down. Why not? It's important to be upfront about these things. I felt my stomach twist as a wave of panic set in. This wasn't just awkward, it was alarming. I needed to leave. Fast. I think this isn't going to work out, I said, pushing back my chair and reaching for my bag. Wait, where are you going? He asked, standing up as I did. His tone wasn't angry, but there was an unsettling edge of desperation in his voice. I'm leaving, I said firmly, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. This is too much. I turned and started walking toward the exit, but he followed, his footsteps quickening behind me. My pulse spiked as I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting me like a jolt of adrenaline. What are you doing? I snapped, spinning to face him. Why are you following me? His response made my blood run cold. I don't have anywhere to go, he said simply, as if that explained everything. I lied about where I live. My heart sank. What are you talking about? I don't live nearby, he admitted, his tone matter of fact. I drove 4 hours to meet you. I figured I could stay with you tonight. The audacity of his words left me momentarily speechless. He'd not only lied about his location, but had somehow convinced himself that I, someone he'd never met in person until tonight, would let him crash at my place. Absolutely not, I said, my voice rising with anger. You need to leave. Now. He tried to argue, but I wasn't having it. I turned and walked away, my every instinct screaming at me to get as far from him as possible. I didn't look back until I was safely in my car, my hands trembling as I locked the doors. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number. My stomach churned as I opened it, already dreading what I'd find. I miss you already, the message read, complete with a winking emoji. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Miss me? You terrified me. I didn't hesitate. I blocked him immediately, deleting the message, as if erasing it could somehow undo the entire nightmare of a date. I was already at the table, stomach growling, and checking the time for what felt like the 100th time. He was late. Not fashionably late. Not the kind of late that gives you butterflies while you wait, wondering if this person is as charming in real life as they seemed online. No. This was no regard for basic etiquette late. It was supposed to be a casual lunch, nothing fancy, just a simple meet and greet to see if the spark we had online translated into something real. But as the minutes dragged on, that spark was flickering out. When I finally worked up the nerve to text him and ask for his ETA, his response floored me. "I'll be 30 minutes late. Just start eating if you're hungry." No apology. No explanation. Just a casual suggestion to carry on without him. I stared at my phone, trying to decide if I was more annoyed by his lack of effort or by the fact that my hunger was winning this battle. I ordered something small to tide me over and told myself to let it go. First dates are nerve-wracking. Maybe he'd had a rough morning. Maybe he was shy and fumbling. My inner optimist was working overtime to drown out my growing irritation. Finally, more than 30 minutes past his promised arrival, he showed up. At first, I didn't recognize him. The guy who'd been sending me playful texts and witty jokes online was replaced by someone who looked like he'd rolled out of bed and wandered into the wrong restaurant. His hair stuck out in every direction, a literal bird's nest of tangles and neglect. He wore a wrinkled promotional t-shirt from some random event, baggy shorts that screamed laundry day, and a pair of flip-flops that looked like they'd seen better days. No apology. No sheepish grin. Just a chirpy, "Hey," as he plopped into the seat across from me. I blinked at him, momentarily at a loss for words. This wasn't just a casual approach to a casual lunch. This was a complete disregard for the fact that he was on a date. I tried to hide my shock, but I could feel my expression slipping. Did he think this was acceptable? Did he think I'd find this charmingly quirky? As he reached for the menu, my patience snapped. "I'm sorry," I said, forcing a tight smile. "I'm really tired. I think I need to head home." He looked up, confusion flashing across his face, but there was no real concern. No attempt to salvage the date or even to ask if everything was okay. "Oh, okay," he said with a shrug, already turning his attention back to the menu. I stood, grabbed my bag, and walked away, each step feeling lighter as the distance between us grew. The cool air outside was a welcome relief, and as I put more and more space between myself and that disastrous date, the absurdity of the situation began to sink in. How had I even let it get to this point? I'd walked into that restaurant expecting effort, respect, and maybe even a bit of romance. Instead, I'd been met with bedhead and a complete lack of accountability. Once I was far enough away, I pulled out my phone and blocked him. No follow-up messages. No second chances. I wasn't going to waste another second on someone who couldn't even bother to apologize for being late, let alone put in the bare minimum effort to show up looking presentable. As I walked home, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. I'd thought that someone who wasn't conventionally attractive might try harder, might take the time to impress, knowing they didn't have the luxury of coasting on their looks. But this was a new low. I replayed the scene in my head, from his nonchalant arrival to his oblivious attitude. For a moment, I wondered if I'd overreacted. Was I being too harsh? Too judgmental? But no, this wasn't about appearances. It was about respect, and he hadn't shown any. Not for me, not for the date, not even for himself. When I got home, I kicked off my shoes, sank onto the couch, and let out a deep breath. The frustration I'd felt earlier was already fading, replaced by a strange sense of relief. I'd dodged a bullet. This wasn't a loss, it was a win. I opened my phone, scrolled through my messages, and deleted our entire chat history. As I watched the conversation disappear, I felt a surge of empowerment. One bad date didn't define me, and it certainly didn't mean I had to lower my standards. The lesson was clear: never settle for someone who makes you feel like you're an afterthought. Because if they can't even bother to try on the first date, what hope is there for the future? It's funny now looking back. The absurdity of it all has turned the frustration into something I can laugh about. But at the time, it was a wake-up call, a reminder to value myself and to never let anyone treat me as though I'm not worth the effort. I met Eli on Hinge. He was 36, a software developer who, according to his profile, loved road trips, cooking, and deep conversations over strong coffee. He had a quiet smile in his photos, like he was always holding back laughter, and a beard that was just a little uneven. He looked normal. Not polished, not trying too hard. That was refreshing. We started chatting on a Tuesday afternoon. By Saturday, we were texting nonstop. He was good at keeping the conversation going without being too much. Asked about my favorite books, and then actually read one of them. Called me quick-witted when I made a dumb joke about my cat knocking over my houseplants. Our first date was at a brewery downtown. He was a little taller than I expected, smelled like cedar and clean laundry, and had a way of listening that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We shared 2 flights and a plate of pretzel bites. When I told him I was trying to rebuild trust after a toxic relationship, he didn't flinch. Just nodded and said, "You don't owe anyone your softness until they earn it." We ended the night with a hug. He didn't try to push anything. Texted me when he got home. Tonight was easy in the best way. We saw each other again the next week. Then again the week after that. Always at public places, coffee shops, bookstores, a couple of casual dinners. No pressure, no red flags. He never came on too strong. I appreciated that. After about a month of dating, he invited me over for dinner. "I make a mean chicken cacciatore," he said, "and I promise I won't overcook the pasta." I hesitated. I hadn't been to his place yet, but we'd spent hours together. He'd never made me uncomfortable. And I liked him. Liked how calm I felt around him. So I said yes. He lived in a quiet neighborhood about 25 minutes from mine. Lots of trees, houses with wide driveways and wind chimes. His place was a small ranch-style house with a porch swing and mismatched flower pots. He greeted me at the door with a dish towel slung over his shoulder and a little bit of flour on his shirt. "You're early," he said, grinning. "I haven't finished burning dinner yet." I laughed. Followed him inside. The house smelled like garlic and red wine. The kitchen was clean but lived in, wooden cutting board, spice jars lined up on a shelf, a fridge covered in postcards and grocery lists. He poured me a glass of red and told me to make myself at home. While he finished cooking, I wandered toward the living room. There were books stacked on the coffee table, a cat curled up on the couch, her name was Olive, and a record player in the corner. Everything felt normal, comfortable. When dinner was ready, we sat at the small table by the window. The chicken was perfect, the pasta slightly overcooked, and we both laughed when I pointed it out. We talked for 2 hours, maybe more. He asked questions about my family, my childhood, my writing. Told me about growing up in Vermont, and how he once got stuck in a snowstorm for 5 hours with only a granola bar and a dying phone. At one point, I asked where his bathroom was. "Down the hall, second door on the left," he said. "Don't open the door at the end. That's my basement. It sticks and is a pain to close again." I nodded and went to the bathroom. When I came out, I paused. The basement door wasn't completely shut. It was slightly ajar, enough to show the top of a wooden staircase. I don't know why I looked. Curiosity, I guess. I wasn't snooping. I just glanced. There was a light on down there. I could see the concrete floor, part of a metal shelving unit, and something white near the bottom step. I leaned slightly to get a better view. It was a folding table. On it, a laptop, a pair of gloves, and what looked like a wig. I froze. Not because of what I saw, exactly. It wasn't that any one item was horrifying. But something about the combination, the secrecy, the fact that he'd told me not to look, it all made my skin crawl. I stepped back and quietly pulled the door closed. When I returned to the kitchen, Eli was rinsing dishes. "Thanks for dinner," I said, keeping my voice steady. He smiled. "You okay?" "Yeah, just tired. I think I'm gonna head out." He offered to walk me to the car, but I declined. "Don't worry," I said. "I park like a professional escape artist." He laughed, and I forced a smile. But inside, I was buzzing. I didn't sleep well that night. Kept replaying the image of that basement. The table. The gloves. The wig. I told myself I was being dramatic. Maybe the gloves were for gardening. Maybe the wig was for a Halloween costume. Maybe the laptop was where he did freelance work. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The next day I Googled him. His name, the one he gave me, brought up a LinkedIn profile. Sparse, but it matched what he'd told me, software developer, Vermont native. I searched deeper. Found an old college newspaper article from 2007. He was listed as part of a campus coding competition. Same name, same major. But the photo wasn't him. Different guy entirely. I went back to his Facebook. His profile was private, barely used. A few pictures, none recent. Not many friends. Something felt off. I reverse image searched one of his profile pictures. It showed up on a stock photo site. Under the tag, friendly man in casual clothes. I sat there, stomach sinking. Heart racing. The man I'd been dating wasn't Eli. Or at least, not the Eli he pretended to be. I called the number he'd been using. It rang once, then went to voicemail. His voice was still there, calm, familiar. I didn't leave a message. I reported the profile on Hinge. Blocked the number. Sent the information I had, screenshots, messages, the stock photo link, to a friend who worked in cybersecurity. She called me that night. "I don't want to freak you out," she said, "but this guy's digital footprint is razor thin. Like, intentionally built to look real but vanish when you push." I filed a police report. Told them everything. They took it seriously, to their credit. Asked for all the messages, his address, the night I visited. They went to the house. It was empty. Furniture gone. Appliances too. The landlord said the tenant had moved out that morning. Paid cash for the last month. Left no forwarding address. The man I'd known as Eli had disappeared. I haven't heard from him since. I didn't expect to be dating again at 42. After my divorce, I told myself I'd take a year to just focus on me and my daughter, Kayla. She was 14 at the time, old enough to understand that her parents were better off apart, but still young enough that I worried about how everything would affect her. The first year post-divorce was about survival. Paying bills, rebuilding our routines, learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. Then slowly I started thinking about companionship again. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I just missed conversation. Missed being seen. Kayla was the one who finally nudged me. "Mom," she said one night over spaghetti, "you should go on a date." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a weird thing to hear from your teenager." She shrugged. "You're allowed to be happy." So I downloaded a dating app. I wasn't expecting much, maybe a few awkward coffee dates, a couple of ghostings, and best case, someone who didn't make me want to fake an emergency halfway through dinner. That's when I matched with Greg. He was 45, worked in environmental consulting, and lived about 20 minutes away. His profile had pictures of him hiking, smiling with a golden retriever, and grilling something on a patio. He wrote that he was family-oriented, emotionally available, and ready for the next chapter. It felt safe. That was my first impression. He didn't have that overly polished, too smooth vibe that some men on the app had. He seemed normal, grounded. We messaged for a few days before talking on the phone. He had a deep, reassuring voice. Asked thoughtful questions. Told me he'd been divorced for a few years, no kids. Said he liked that I was honest about having a teenage daughter. "I admire single moms," he said. "It's the hardest job in the world." Our first date was coffee on a Sunday afternoon. He was warm and easy to talk to. No red flags. No weird comments. Just good conversation and a shared slice of lemon cake. We saw each other again the following weekend. Then again 2 days after that. He didn't rush anything. Didn't push for more than I was comfortable giving. He texted good morning. Asked how my meetings went. Sent me a photo of his dog, Ranger, curled up under a blanket. After about a month, I mentioned that my church was holding its annual spring potluck. I wasn't inviting him, not directly. I was just talking about it in passing. But he lit up. "That sounds lovely," he said. "I haven't been to a church dinner in years." I hesitated. "It's mostly families. Not really a dating scene." He smiled. "I'm not going to cruise for dates. I just think it'd be nice to meet the people important to you. Unless you'd rather I didn't come." I didn't know how to say no without sounding rude. And honestly, it didn't seem like a big deal. It was a public event. Plenty of people would be around. So I said sure. He offered to bring a dish, homemade meatballs, he said, from his grandmother's recipe. The night of the potluck, he showed up early. Wore a blue button-down and khakis. Brought a tray of meatballs, a container of extra sauce, and a bouquet of tulips for me. Everyone loved him. He was charming without being showy. Asked people about their kids. Complimented the food. Even helped fold chairs when the event was winding down. At one point, I saw him talking to Kayla and 2 of her friends. They were sitting on the edge of the stage in the fellowship hall, laughing at something he'd said. It made me smile. He didn't seem like the type to treat teenage girls as invisible, which I appreciated. Later, as we were packing up, Kayla was quieter than usual. "You okay?" I asked on the drive home. She nodded. "Yeah, just tired." She didn't bring him up. I didn't push. But something in her tone felt off. I figured maybe she was still adjusting. It was only the second time she'd been around him. 2 nights later, I found her sitting on her bed, scrolling through something on her phone, her face tight. "Hey," I said. "Want to talk?" She hesitated. Then she said, "Greg's weird." My stomach dropped. I sat on the edge of her bed. "What do you mean?" She looked at me, then down at her hands. During the potluck, he asked me if I had a boyfriend. And when I said no, he said, "Good. You're too pretty for boys your age. They wouldn't know what to do with you." I stared at her. Then she added, "He also asked if I had Instagram." I said no. He said that was a shame, that he'd love to see the kinds of pictures I post. I felt my chest tighten. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I asked gently. She shrugged. "I don't know. I thought maybe I imagined it. But I kept thinking about it, and it just felt gross." I hugged her, told her she did the right thing by telling me, that she didn't imagine it, that her instincts were good. After she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the wall. I didn't want to believe it, but I did, because I remembered the way he'd looked at her, just a beat too long. The way he'd asked about her school, her interests, her schedule, all under the guise of polite adult conversation. I texted him the next morning. "We need to talk." He didn't reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. By lunchtime, his number was disconnected. His dating profile was gone. His LinkedIn, Facebook, even the photos he'd sent me, all disappeared. I called the number listed on the environmental consulting firm he claimed to work for. They'd never heard of him. I drove by the address he gave me the first time we met. It was a house, but it was vacant. For sale. A real estate sign in the yard. The man I'd been seeing didn't exist. Or at least, not in the way I thought. I filed a report. Told the church leadership. Told the other parents whose kids had spoken to him. Everyone was horrified. A few people asked if I'd checked him out before bringing him around. I didn't have the energy to defend myself. Because the truth is, I had. I'd Googled him. Searched his number. Looked up the company. Nothing screamed fake. And yet, I don't know what his real name was. Or what he wanted. Or why he vanished so quickly. But I know this. He was interested in my daughter. Not in me. And he used me to get close to her. It's been almost a year since that night. Kayla's doing okay. We've talked about it more than once. She says it feels like a bad dream now, blurry around the edges. But she still doesn't like it when I mention dating. Says she wants me to wait a little longer. I'd been out of a long-term relationship for about a year, and I was cautiously trying to date again. Not looking for anything serious, but open to it if the right person came along. I was mostly matching with people close to my age, late 20s, early 30s, because I didn't feel like dealing with the different expectations that often come with big age gaps. That's when I matched with Jess. Her profile said she was 26. She had a short bio, books, coffee, sapphic chaos. Her photos were casual, one at a bookstore, one with a cat curled up on her lap, one mirror selfie wearing a band tee I actually recognized, which is rare. She messaged first, "You look like the type of person who alphabetizes their spice rack." I laughed. She wasn't wrong. Our conversation was easy from the start. She was clever, sarcastic, and just a little weird in a way that felt familiar. We talked about our favorite childhood books, bad tattoos, and how neither of us understood the appeal of brunch, but somehow kept ending up at it anyway. We texted for a week before meeting in person. She lived about 30 minutes away, in a smaller town just outside of the city. Said she worked part-time at a library and was finishing up a degree in graphic design. We met at a cafe halfway between us. She was a little shorter than I expected, with dyed blue hair, chipped nail polish, and a nervous energy that was oddly charming. She didn't make a lot of eye contact, but when she did, it felt intense. We sat outside and talked for 2 hours. She told me about a zine she was working on, and I told her about the worst job I ever had, which involved dressing as a mascot for a local car dealership. She laughed so hard she snorted, then apologized for it. That night, she messaged me, "I like you." I don't usually say that this fast, but I do. I smiled at the screen for longer than I should admit. We saw each other again the next week. Then again the week after that. Things stayed casual, but there was a growing closeness. We were texting constantly, sharing playlists, talking about things that felt heavier, past relationships, family stuff, fears we didn't usually say out loud. One night, we were lying on my couch watching a terrible horror movie, and she suddenly asked, "Would it be weird if I said I wanted to keep seeing you, like seriously?" I turned to her. "No, that wouldn't be weird." She smiled. "Good. I was worried you might think I'm too young or something." That made me pause. "You're 26, I said. "That's not too young." She went quiet for a second. Then she said, "Okay, so there's something I have to tell you." I felt my stomach tighten. "I'm not 26, she said. "I'm 20. I stared at her. She rushed on. "I know that's a lot, and I know I should have told you sooner. But I liked you, and I didn't think you'd even talk to me if I put my real age. I don't usually lie about this, but you seemed safe. You didn't message me anything creepy. You seemed kind. I didn't know what to say, because 20 isn't illegal. It's not like she was 16 or something, but it felt off, like I'd been tricked into something I didn't agree to. I asked her why she lied. She said, "People don't take me seriously when they know my real age. I hate how fast people dismiss you when you're young. Like you can't be smart or mature or interesting unless you've hit 25. I understood that. On some level, I really did. But still, you lied to me, I said. That matters. She looked down. I know. I'm sorry. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Eventually, she left. I didn't say whether I'd see her again. The next day, I got a long message from her, apologizing again, saying she understood if I didn't want to talk anymore, but also saying she didn't regret matching with me, that she felt something real, even if it started from something fake. I didn't reply. I needed space, time to think, to figure out how I felt. A few days passed. Then I started getting messages from new Tinder profiles. Different names, different photos, but the same writing style, the same jokes. One profile said, "Some people ghost because they're cowards." Another, "Still thinking about those playlists." Then another that just said, "You never gave me a chance." I unmatched all of them. I blocked the numbers when they started texting me. But they kept showing up. Each time slightly different, slightly more invasive. One night, I got a message from a new number that just said, "I saw you at the bookstore yesterday. Why didn't you say hi?" I had been at the bookstore. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. I checked the windows, locked the door again, made sure the curtains were closed. The next day, I got a friend request on Instagram from an account named Your Second Chance. No profile picture, no posts. The bio said, "You made a mistake." I didn't respond. I just blocked again. But the thing is, once that line gets crossed, you start questioning everything. Every notification, every anonymous like, every glance over your shoulder in public. I stopped using Tinder, deleted my account entirely. I started posting less. I kept my location off. I changed my phone number. It didn't stop right away. The last message I got was a voice memo from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't open it. I just deleted it, blocked the sender, turned off my phone, and sat there in the dark for a long time. It's been over a year now. I haven't seen her since. Haven't heard anything. I don't know if she finally moved on, or just found someone else to fixate on. It started like most things do nowadays, on an app. I matched with a woman named Sarah on a Tuesday night. Her profile was simple, a few pictures of her at a farmer's market, one with a dog, and a short bio that read, "Books, bourbon, and brutal honesty." She looked warm, brown eyes, dark hair, a little smirk in every photo like she was always mid-thought, but not quite ready to share it. We exchanged messages for a few days. She was quick-witted, and our conversations had a rhythm that made it easy to keep texting. She asked real questions, not just WID, or "What music do you like?" She asked about my childhood, about what I feared, about the last time I cried. I remember thinking, either this woman is deeply curious or she's trying to fast-track emotional intimacy. Maybe both. We met for dinner the following Saturday. She picked the place, an old-fashioned Italian spot tucked between a dry cleaner and a vape shop. The kind of place where the bread comes warm and the lighting is low enough to make everyone look a little better. When she walked in, she smiled like we were old friends. She wore a green sweater and jeans, nothing flashy, but she had presence. The kind that makes you sit up straighter. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about our worst dates. Hers involved a guy who brought his mother along. Mine, a woman who quoted Jordan Peterson during dessert. By the time the check came, I felt relaxed, even hopeful. But then something strange happened. As we waited for the waiter to return with the change, a man approached our table. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, with a shaved head and a hoodie that said "No Fear" in peeling letters. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, staring at Sarah. I felt the energy shift immediately. Sarah's face went pale. "Hi, Nick," she said, barely above a whisper. "Hey, babe," he said. "Didn't know we were seeing other people now." I looked at her, confused. "Is this your—" She stood up quickly. "We're not together," she said. "You need to leave." But Nick didn't move. Instead, he turned to me. "You think she's special?" he asked. "She's not. She's a liar. She'll ruin you. Okay, man, I said, standing up too. You need to back off. He laughed once, low and bitter. Then he grabbed a water glass from the table and threw it at me. It missed, but the splash soaked my shirt. Before I could react, the waiter rushed over, followed by the manager. Nick stepped back, hands raised, and said, I'm leaving. Don't worry. But she's mine. Always will be. Then he walked out. No one chased him. We sat down in silence. I was shaking. Not from fear exactly, more from the adrenaline of being caught in something I didn't understand. I'm so sorry, Sarah said. I didn't know he'd be here. I didn't even think he'd still be in town. Who is he? I asked. My ex, she said. We broke up a year ago. He didn't take it well. That wasn't not taking it well, I said. That was stalking. She nodded. I know. It's been off and on. He shows up sometimes. But I thought he'd finally moved on. I didn't know what to say. She looked so shaken, and I felt bad for her, but I also felt pulled out of the moment. Like the bubble we'd been in had burst, and now everything was under fluorescent light. I drove her home that night. She asked me to walk her to her door. I did. She hugged me before going inside. It was tight, grateful, but I noticed she looked over her shoulder twice before unlocking the door. After that, I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to give her space. The other part didn't want to vanish and make her feel abandoned. She texted me the next morning. Said she'd had a great time, minus the obvious. That I'd been kind. That she hoped I didn't think less of her. I told her I didn't. I wasn't lying exactly. I just didn't know how to feel. We went out again a week later. This time it was drinks at a jazz bar. She seemed lighter, more herself. She apologized again for Nick, said she'd talked to a lawyer once but didn't want to escalate things. I don't want to live in fear, she said. I don't want him to have that power. I admired that. But I also wondered if she was underestimating the situation. Over the next month, we kept seeing each other. She never brought up Nick again, and I didn't ask. I figured maybe he'd gotten the message. Until I found my car vandalized. It was a Friday night. We'd gone out for dinner, and I'd parked on the street near her place. When I came out, the windshield was cracked, and the driver's side door had been scratched deeply. On the paint, in red spray, were 2 words. She's mine. I stood there, staring at it, not fully processing. Sarah came out behind me, saw the message, and froze. Oh God, she whispered. He didn't. He wouldn't. But he had. I filed a report. The cop wrote it down like it was just another form. Didn't seem too concerned. Said it was hard to press charges without proof. Sarah was quiet the whole time. I didn't go inside her place that night. I just drove home with the spray paint still fresh in the air. The next morning, I got a message from Nick. He'd found me on Facebook. The message was short. She'll ruin you. Just like she ruined me. I showed Sarah. She blocked him again. Said she'd report it. But I could tell she was scared now too. We didn't talk for a few days. Then she messaged me. I understand if you want to disappear. I thought about it. A part of me wanted to stay. Wanted to be the guy who didn't flinch. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at her. The message. The damage to my car. How far he might go next time. I texted her back. I care about you, but I don't think I can do this. She didn't answer. I haven't seen her since. She deleted her dating profile. Went offline for a while. Sometimes I search her name, just to see if she's okay. I haven't found anything. No posts. No updates. It's like she disappeared. And maybe that's for the best. But I still think about her.